If you have ever watched Death Wish and thought that little nickel-plated revolver Charles Bronson carried could do everything the movie says it can, this one is for you. That gun is real. Its limitations are very real. And the gap between what the film showed you and what the gun actually does is massive. This video examines firearms strictly as historical movie props and within a film analysis context. It is not about real-world use, tactics, or instruction. If you notice when movies nail the details or completely miss them, this is the kind of channel to subscribe to. Let us get into it. Death Wish follows Paul Kersey, played by Charles Bronson, a successful architect living in New York City with his wife Joanna, played by Hope Lang. Right at the beginning of the film, Kersey and his wife come back from a vacation in Hawaii. Everything seems fine. Then 3 muggers follow Joanna and their daughter Carol, played by Kathleen Tolan, home from a grocery store. The intruders break into their apartment, attack both women, and Joanna dies from the beating. Carol is left in a catatonic state, and just like that, the movie sets up its entire reason for existing. Kersey finds out at the hospital. The police investigation goes nowhere. The film is making a point here about a system that cannot protect its people. Kersey, broken by grief, throws himself into work. That work sends him to Tucson, Arizona, where he meets a client named Ames Johnchill, played by Stuart Margolin. Johnchill is a gun enthusiast and takes Kersey to a shooting range. This is where the film drops a piece of backstory that matters. Kersey served in the Korean War as a conscientious objector and combat medic. He never carried a weapon in combat, yet at the range, he impresses Johnchill with his accuracy using a Colt single-action Army revolver. When Kersey leaves Tucson, Johnchill slips a gift into his suitcase, a nickel-plated .32 caliber Colt Police Positive revolver with pearl grips and a 4-inch barrel, along with ammunition. This is the moment the film shifts. That gun is the turning point for the entire story. It is framed as a piece of frontier justice handed off to a modern man in a city that has lost control. Back in New York, Kersey loads the revolver and starts walking through dangerous neighborhoods at night, essentially setting himself up as bait. His first encounter involves a mugger played by Christopher Guest in an early role. The mugger pulls a Smith & Wesson Model 36 on Kersey. Kersey draws the Colt and fires, killing the man. He runs home and throws up. The film actually takes a moment here to show the emotional toll of what just happened. It does not last long. From this point on, the movie turns Kersey into a full-on vigilante. He shoots 2 muggers in a subway car. He guns down a group trying to rob him in a park. He even challenges a fleeing criminal to something like a fast draw before collapsing from a wound himself. Every single time, the Colt Police Positive works flawlessly on screen. Every shot lands, every target drops. The gun never jams, never misses, never runs dry at the wrong time. The media in the film dubs Kersey the vigilante, and the movie shows crime rates dropping as muggers get scared off the streets. Meanwhile, NYPD Inspector Frank Ochoa, played by Vincent Gardenia, starts piecing things together. He narrows the suspect list to war veterans who recently lost family members. Eventually, he confronts Kersey, who denies everything. The deal they reach is that Kersey leaves town quietly. In the final scene, Kersey is in Chicago, spots muggers harassing someone, and points his fingers like a gun. The cycle continues. Throughout all of this, the Colt Police Positive is filmed like a character of its own. The nickel finish catches streetlights. Muzzle flashes shift between realistic reds and dramatic yellows for visual effect. Bronson handles it with a calm, almost mechanical precision that makes the audience believe this small revolver can solve any problem. The movie absolutely needs you to believe that. The whole story falls apart if the gun feels inadequate. Now let us talk about the real gun. The Colt Police Positive was introduced in 1905 by Colt Manufacturing Company. It was designed as a compact, reliable, drop-safe revolver for law enforcement and civilian use. It evolved from an earlier model called the New Police and featured something called Colt's Positive Lock Safety, which was a hammer block that prevented the gun from going off if it was dropped. That was a big deal in 1905. The gun was chambered in several calibers, but the version used in Death Wish was the .32 Colt Police, which is equivalent to the .32 Smith & Wesson Long. Here are the basic specs of the gun as it appeared in the film. The caliber is .32 Smith & Wesson Long. The action is double action and single action. It holds 6 rounds. The barrel length in the movie is 4 inches. Overall length comes to about 8.5 inches. Weight is between 20 and 22 ounces unloaded. The sights are a fixed front blade and a rear notch, and the finish in the film was nickel-plated with pearl grips, which gave it that distinctive look on camera. Over 750,000 Colt Police Positives were manufactured before production ended in 1943, when it was phased out in favor of more modern designs. In its time, this was a popular choice for both police departments and everyday civilians across the country. It was affordable, roughly $20 in the 1920s, which adjusts to about $300 today. It was marketed as a pocket protection option, compact enough to fit in a coat or a purse. For the early 1900s, this was a solid, dependable firearm. It saw real service on real streets, carried by real officers. That history is part of what makes it such an interesting prop choice for the film. Here is where things start to separate from what the movie shows you. The .32 Smith & Wesson Long fires a 98-grain bullet at around 700 to 800 feet per second, generating about 130 to 150 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. To put that in perspective, a modern 9mm round produces over 350 foot-pounds. A standard .38 Special sits above 200 foot-pounds. The .32 is on the lower end of what you would consider a self-defense caliber, and it was already being criticized for that even in the early 1900s. Ballistic gelatin tests, which are the standard way to measure how a bullet performs when it hits a target, show the .32 Smith & Wesson Long penetrating between 8 and 15 inches, depending on the type of ammunition used. The FBI protocol for effective self-defense ammunition requires between 12 and 18 inches of penetration to reliably reach vital organs through barriers like heavy clothing or a person's arms. Some .32 loads meet that standard, others fall short. Wadcutter rounds, which are flat-tipped bullets designed for target shooting, tend to penetrate well at around 15 inches, but they do not expand. Hollow point rounds, designed to open up on impact, sometimes underpenetrate at only 8 inches. Experts like Darrell Bulk have noted that the .32 caliber has a place in compact snub-nose revolvers because the mild recoil makes it easier to shoot accurately. That's a fair point. Recoil matters when you are talking about follow-up shots. The trade-off is that the wound channels created by .32 caliber bullets are smaller than those from larger rounds, meaning each individual shot is less likely to immediately stop a threat on its own. In the film, Kersey drops attackers with 1 or 2 shots almost every time. In real-world data, 1 shot stops with any handgun caliber are rare. They typically require a direct hit to the central nervous system or a major blood vessel. That kind of precise accuracy is extremely difficult under stress. And it gets harder with a smaller caliber that offers less margin for error. That brings us to the next point. The accuracy limitations of the Colt Police Positive are worth understanding in context. The gun uses fixed sights, a tiny rear V-notch, and a thin front blade. The sight radius, which is the distance between the front and rear sights, is short on a 4-inch barrel. That makes precise alignment harder, especially beyond about 7 yards. In double action mode, where pulling the trigger both cocks and fires the hammer, the trigger pull is heavy at around 10 to 12 pounds. In single action mode, where you manually cock the hammer first, the pull drops to about 4 to 5 pounds, which is much easier to manage. Skilled shooters in controlled tests can produce groups of about 4 to 6 inches at 15 yards with this gun. For someone without regular training, accuracy drops off significantly. Now compare that to how Bronson uses the gun in the film. He fires quickly, under pressure, in the dark, at moving targets, and never misses. That is pure cinema. Speaking of pressure, there's something called stress shooting that the movie completely ignores. When a person is in a life-threatening situation, the body's fight or flight response kicks in. Heart rate jumps above 150 beats per minute, tunnel vision sets in, hearing becomes muffled or disappears entirely. Fine motor skills, the kind you need to align sights and squeeze a trigger smoothly, start to break down. Studies from the Force Science Institute show that accuracy can drop by 50 to 80% in simulated combat scenarios. People miss at close range. They empty entire magazines without landing a single hit. Trained law enforcement officers, people who practice regularly and go through qualification courses, hit their targets only about 18 to 25% of the time in actual gunfights. Kersey, a man who is a conscientious objector and has no documented combat firearms training, somehow hits 100% of his shots in the film. The movie needs that to work for the story, so it simply ignores the reality of what happens to the human body under extreme stress. Civilians in actual defensive situations often report shaking hands, blurred vision, and a sense of time distortion. Many describe freezing entirely or not remembering how many times they pulled the trigger. Training can help manage these responses, but it does not eliminate them. Even with years of practice, the body still reacts to mortal danger in ways that are extremely difficult to override. The calm, almost casual way Kersey handles every encounter and death. Wish has no connection to how these situations play out in real life. The film strips away every inconvenient biological reality to keep the story moving. Here is the bigger picture. Death Wish came out during a very specific moment in American history. New York City in the early 1970s was dealing with a serious crime wave. Violent crime rates were climbing. People felt unsafe. The film tapped directly into that fear and frustration. It gave audiences a fantasy where one ordinary person could fix the problem with a simple tool. The gun became the answer to a complicated social issue, and the movie made sure that answer always worked perfectly. Hollywood does this consistently across every genre that involves firearms. Violence in films is clean, fast, and decisive because that is what sells tickets. Those do not make for exciting cinema. Studios know this, directors know this, writers know this. They simplify violent encounters into empowering moments because audiences respond to that emotionally. It is not unique to Death Wish. You see the same patterns across decades of American action films. Unlimited ammunition, zero recoil, instant stops, perfect accuracy under any conditions. These are standard tools in the Hollywood toolkit, and they have been since the earliest Westerns. What makes Death Wish stand out is how effectively it tied all of that to a specific real-world firearm. The Colt Police Positive is a real gun with a real history, real limitations, and real ballistic data you can look up. The film took that real object and turned it into something it was never designed to be, an unstoppable tool of personal justice. The nickel finish and pearl grips were not chosen because they improved performance. They were chosen because they looked good on camera. For anyone watching this in the United States, where conversations about firearms, self-defense, and personal safety are constant, it is worth understanding where the line sits between a movie prop and a real tool. The Colt Police Positive was a fine revolver for its era. It served law enforcement and civilians for decades. It earned its place in firearms history. What it did not earn is the reputation Death Wish gave it. The film made a .32 caliber revolver from 1905 look like the ultimate answer to urban crime in 1974. Real ballistic data, real accuracy tests, and real stress response research all tell a different story. Death Wish is a fascinating piece of 1970s cinema that captured a cultural moment perfectly. It gave audiences what they wanted during a time when fear of crime was at a peak. The Colt Police Positive is a historically significant firearm that deserves to be understood on its own terms, as a product of its era with clear strengths and clear limitations. When you separate the two, the movie and the gun, you get a clearer picture of both.